Welcome everyone. Today, we have something truly special for you. A story that is not just about learning English, it's about changing your life through English. If someone told me 5 years ago that English would change my entire life, I would have laughed. Back then, English was just another subject, something I had to pass in school, not something that could open doors. I didn't know that one day, those very words I struggled to pronounce would help me meet people from around the world, work in places I once only dreamed of, and most importantly, find my voice. 1. The beginning, my silent world. I grew up in a small town, where speaking English was almost unnecessary. We learned grammar, memorized vocabulary, but no one spoke. I was the same. I could write essays, but when someone asked, "Can you introduce yourself in English?" my brain froze. My mouth went dry. My heart raced. I felt stupid. The truth was, it wasn't that I didn't know English, I just couldn't use it. And that's worse than not knowing it at all. Every time I heard someone speak English fluently, whether on YouTube, in a movie, or even a tourist at the cafe, I felt a mix of admiration and envy. How do they speak so easily? How do they find the words so fast? I told myself, they must be talented. I'm just not that kind of person. But deep down, something in me refused to accept that. I knew I wasn't stupid. I just hadn't found the right way to learn. 2. The breaking point. One day, during a job interview, I was asked a simple question. Tell me about yourself in English. It was just one sentence. But I couldn't do it. I stood there, silent. My mind went completely blank. The interviewer waited, smiling politely, but I could see disappointment in his eyes. When I left the room, my chest hurt. Not because I failed the interview, but because I realized I had failed myself. I had studied English for 10 years, but I couldn't even say a simple introduction confidently. That night, I didn't sleep. I looked at myself in the mirror, and whispered, "You either change today, or you'll live the rest of your life wishing you had." That moment changed everything. 3. The turning point, training my brain. The next morning, I made a decision. I didn't just want to learn English anymore. I wanted to train my brain to think in English. Because I realized, the reason I couldn't speak wasn't my tongue, it was my brain. My brain was still thinking in my native language, translating every word, and by the time I found the English version, the conversation was already over. So I told myself, if my brain can think in my language, it can also think in English, I just need to train it. That was the start of my journey. 4. Step 1. Immerse your brain, create an English world around you. I started small. I changed my phone, my laptop, everything, into English. At first, it was confusing. I didn't even know what settings or notifications meant. But within a week, my brain began to adapt. Then, I began watching English videos, but not just watching, I listened actively. I paused after every sentence, and repeated what I heard, mimicking the tone, rhythm, and emotion. I didn't care if I sounded weird. I talked to myself in English every single day. In the beginning, my family thought I'd gone crazy. "Who are you talking to?" my mom asked once. I smiled and said, "To my future self, who speaks English fluently." That line became my motivation. 5. Step 2. Train your brain, not your grammar. I stopped memorizing grammar rules. For years, grammar had been my prison. I was too afraid to speak because I might make a mistake. So, I changed my goal. Instead of speaking perfectly, I focused on speaking naturally. I told myself, a baby doesn't learn grammar first. A baby listens, copies, and speaks, then learns rules later. So, I started doing the same. I used simple sentences, repeated phrases, and focused on rhythm and flow. I didn't care if it was perfect. And ironically, the less I focused on grammar, the more fluent I became. 6. Step 3. Practice every day, even when no one's listening. I made a promise, 15 minutes of English speaking every single day. No excuses. If no one was there to talk to, I talked to myself. If I didn't know a word, I described it another way. If I made mistakes, I laughed and tried again. Slowly, my tongue started to catch up with my thoughts. English stopped being a foreign language. It started to feel familiar, like an old friend I was finally getting to know. Then came a big step, recording myself. The first time I heard my own voice, I cringed. But then I realized something powerful: what gets measured gets improved. Every week, I recorded a short clip about anything, my day, my thoughts, a movie I liked, and listened again to find my mistakes. It was painful at first, but I could hear progress. And that sound, of me getting better, became addictive. 7. Step 4. Find emotional connection. One night, while listening to an English podcast, I heard something that changed my perspective. Language is emotion. If you don't feel it, you won't remember it. That hit me hard. Until then, English was just information, words, phrases, grammar. But I realized that the reason I loved my native language was because I felt it. So I began attaching emotion to English. When I watched movies, I felt the lines. When I read books, I underline the sentences that moved me. I didn't just translate, I tried to understand why those words mattered. And slowly, English stopped being foreign. It became part of my emotional world. 8. Step 5. Think in English, train your inner voice. This was the hardest part, but also the most life-changing. I trained myself to think in English. When I woke up, I said in my head, okay, what do I need to do today? In English. When I walked to work, I described what I saw, in English. When I was sad, I told myself why, in English. At first, it felt unnatural. But within months, I realized something magical: my thoughts began flowing in English without translation. My brain had been rewired. That's when I truly began speaking. 9. The first real conversation. I'll never forget the first time I spoke English fluently with a foreigner. It was at a cafe. A tourist asked me, "Is this seat taken?" Usually, I would panic, but that day, I smiled and replied naturally, "No, please, go ahead." We ended up talking for 15 minutes, about travel, food, and life. When he said, "Your English is really good," I almost cried. It wasn't about the compliment. It was about what it meant. All those lonely nights talking to myself, repeating lines, recording videos, and pushing through fear, had finally paid off. That day at the cafe marked the beginning of a new chapter in my life. Something shifted inside me. For the first time, I realized that English wasn't just a language, it was a bridge. A bridge that connected me to the world, to opportunities, and to parts of myself I had never known before. 10. From fear to freedom. After that conversation, I walked home smiling like a fool. It wasn't because I had spoken perfect English, I hadn't. I made small mistakes. I forgot words. But for the first time, I didn't care. I finally understood that communication wasn't about perfection, it was about connection. From that day on, I made a new rule for myself: I don't need to be perfect. I just need to be brave. That mindset changed everything. I started joining online speaking groups. I spoke to strangers on language exchange apps. I left voice messages, recorded myself, and even volunteered to give short talks at work in English. Every time I opened my mouth, fear whispered, "What if they laugh at you?" But another voice, a stronger one, answered, "So what if they do? You're growing." Bit by bit, that stronger voice won. And that's when I realized the most powerful truth of all: your brain learns when you act, not when you wait. Every sentence I spoke, every mistake I made, every time I pushed through fear, I was literally training my brain to be fluent. Not just fluent in English. Fluent in courage. 11. English and my new identity. Before, I used to think English was something I had to add to my life. Now, I see it as something that transformed my life. Because English didn't just change the way I spoke, it changed the way I thought. When I started thinking in English, I began to notice new sides of myself. In my native language, I was shy and cautious. In English, I was curious, expressive, confident. It was like meeting a new version of me, one that had always been there, waiting to speak. I remember writing in my journal, "Learning English is not about sounding like a native. It's about discovering who you can become when you stop being afraid." That realization gave me power. When I spoke in English, I wasn't just using words, I was expressing ideas I never knew I had. It felt like freedom. 12. The world started to open up. Months later, my English improved so much that I started getting noticed at work. My boss once asked if I could help communicate with foreign clients. That one task led to my first international project. Suddenly, I was joining meetings with people from Singapore, Japan, and the US. The first few times, I was nervous, my hands shook under the table. But each time I spoke, the fear lessened. Then something incredible happened. One of the foreign managers said, "I like the way you explain things. You make it sound simple and clear." That compliment felt like a medal. Not because of pride, but because it proved that all those hours of self-training had real impact. Later, I was invited to attend a company workshop abroad. It was my first time on a plane. As I looked out the window, watching the clouds drift by, I whispered to myself, "English brought me here. That moment will stay with me forever." 13. The steps that worked for me. By then, many friends started asking, "How did you do it? How did you train your brain to speak English?" So, I created my own method, not from theory, but from experience. It's simple, but it works, because it changes how your brain connects with the language. Here are the 5 principles that shaped my journey. 1. Speak before you're ready. Don't wait to be fluent to speak. Speak to become fluent. Your brain learns through use, not through waiting for perfection. When you speak, even broken English, you activate neural connections that make the next time easier. 2. Listen like a child. Children learn by listening, not by studying grammar books. I spent hours listening to podcasts, watching movies, and copying native speakers' rhythm and tone. The key was not just hearing, but feeling the sound. When you connect emotion with sound, memory becomes natural. 3. Create an English environment. Surround yourself with English. Phone settings, YouTube, music, sticky notes at home, inner thoughts, everything. When English becomes part of your daily environment, your brain stops seeing it as foreign. 4. Think in English. Train your inner voice. Start small, describe what you see, what you feel, what you plan to do, all in English. This rewires your brain from translating to thinking directly. That's when fluency begins. 5. Fall in love with the process. If you only chase results, you'll quit. But if you fall in love with the process, the sounds, the progress, the feeling of understanding, you'll never stop. Consistency beats intensity. These 5 steps became my map, not just to speak English, but to change my mindset. 14. How English changed my confidence. Before English, I was afraid to speak, not just in another language, but even in my own. I worried about what people thought of me. I kept quiet even when I had ideas. But English forced me to break that fear. Every time I spoke, I had to choose courage over comfort. And that courage started spilling into other parts of my life. I began volunteering to lead meetings. I shared my thoughts more openly. I even started making English videos online, something I never imagined doing before. At first, no one watched them. But that didn't matter. The more I spoke, the clearer my thoughts became. And one day, someone commented, "Your story inspired me to start speaking English too." That message reminded me why I started. 15. The deeper lesson: it's not just about language. The truth is, English didn't magically change my life. The change happened when I changed my mindset. When I stopped saying, "I can't speak English," and started saying, "I'm training my brain to speak English." Those words shifted everything. Because your brain believes what you tell it. If you say, "I can't," it shuts down. If you say, "I'm learning," it wakes up. So every time I struggled, I reminded myself, this is not failure. This is progress in disguise. And that simple mindset helped me keep going, even when I was tired, even when I felt stuck, even when no one understood why I was talking to myself at midnight. 16. The science behind it. Later, I learned that what I was doing actually had a scientific explanation. When we repeat words, sentences, and sounds, our brain creates new neural pathways, like building new roads in a city. At first, traffic is slow. The road is rough. But with repetition, it becomes smoother and faster. That's what fluency really is, the brain's ability to travel those roads effortlessly. And the more emotional and personal your learning is, the faster those roads strengthen. That's why I always tell others, don't just study English. Feel English. Attach it to your dreams, your memories, your life. When language becomes part of your identity, you'll never forget it. 17. The moment of realization. One night, about 3 years after that failed interview, I was cleaning my room, and found the old notebook, where I used to write grammar exercises. I opened it and saw a note I had written years ago: goal, speak English fluently someday. I smiled. Because someday had already arrived, quietly, gradually, through hundreds of small steps. I didn't even realize when it happened. But the boy who once froze in fear was now speaking confidently, even thinking in English while dreaming. That's when I realized, fluency is not a moment. It's a journey, one small conversation at a time. 18. My life now. Today, I work in a global company. I lead international meetings, travel abroad, and mentor others who are learning English. Sometimes, people say, "You're lucky." But I smile, because I know it wasn't luck. It was training. It was persistence. It was thousands of moments when I chose not to give up. English gave me confidence. Confidence gave me opportunities. and opportunities gave me a new life. But most importantly, English gave me myself. 19. The message I want to leave you. If you're listening to this story right now and thinking, "That's amazing, but I can't do it," I want you to stop. You can. You already have the most powerful machine in the world, your brain. You just have to train it. Don't let fear stop you. Don't wait for perfect grammar. Don't hide behind excuses. Start small. Speak one sentence today. Listen deeply. Think in English. Make mistakes. Laugh at them. Keep going. Because the truth is, the difference between you and someone fluent isn't talent, it's consistency. I used to be the boy who couldn't say, "My name is," without trembling. Now, I speak to hundreds of people with confidence. And if I can do it, so can you. 20. The final words, a new beginning. English didn't just change my life, it rewired my brain, rebuilt my confidence, and reminded me that I am capable of more than I thought. When I trained my brain to speak English, I wasn't just learning a language, I was learning courage. I was learning patience. I was learning how to believe in myself again. And that's what I want you to remember: don't learn English to impress others. Learn it to discover the best version of yourself. Because one day, you'll look back and realize that every word, every mistake, every small effort, was leading you to a life you never imagined. So start today. Speak. Train your brain. And let English open your world, just like it opened mine.